Death is an inevitable fate for all beings. After death, the physical body decomposes, but the soul, known as Konpaku, is released. Once freed from bodily constraints, the Konpaku is guided to the Soul Society, a realm existing on a different plane from the living world. The Soul Society maintains balance with the living world through an endless cycle where souls reside together until some return to live again. This cycle ensures equal distribution of souls between both realms. Special guardians, called Soul Reapers, protect and maintain this spiritual equilibrium. Some individuals possess the ability to see, touch, and communicate with ghosts as clearly as living people. These rare individuals can interact with the spiritual realm despite being human. One such person wishes for the strength to protect others from fate, desiring a powerful blade to shatter destiny. A Soul Reaper appears, surprised that a human can see them. The Soul Reaper explains they have traveled from Soul Society to vanquish an evil spirit. When met with disbelief, they demonstrate their power by casting Kido, a binding spell that paralyzes the human, explaining that Soul Reapers are forbidden from killing humans. The Soul Reaper explains their two main duties: guiding normal souls to the Soul Society through Konso, Soul Funeral, and vaporizing hollows, evil spirits that attack other souls. The Soul Reaper is currently on a mission to eliminate a hollow, but has difficulty sensing its presence. A blood-curdling howl from a hollow is heard. Surprisingly, the human detects it before the Soul Reaper can sense it. The human breaks free from the binding spell through sheer spiritual power when learning their family is under attack, an unprecedented feat that shocks the Soul Reaper. Hollows are attracted to high levels of spiritual pressure and attack opportunistically. The Soul Reaper explains that the hollow was targeting the human, whose extraordinary spiritual power allowed them to see Soul Reapers and break binding spells. This revelation devastates the human, who feels responsible for their family being attacked. To save the human's family from the hollow, the Soul Reaper proposes a risky solution, transferring half their Soul Reaper powers to the human. The procedure involves placing the Zanpakuto, Soul Reaper sword, over the human's heart. Despite the low chance of success and death as a potential outcome, they proceed with the plan. The Soul Reaper introduces themselves as Rukia Kuchiki and the human as Ichigo Kurosaki. They complete the power transfer, but Rukia loses all her powers instead of just half. Ichigo's spiritual pressure is so immense that the Zanpakuto becomes unusually large, indicating extraordinary potential. As a substitute Soul Reaper, Ichigo has been busy fighting hollows. He saved his classmate Orihime from a hollow that was her dead brother, and helped his friend Chad rescue a boy's soul trapped in a parakeet from a hollow that was formerly a serial killer. Ichigo now uses a special soul to transform into a Soul Reaper independently. Ichigo's frequent injuries from battling hollows have caused his friends to worry about him. He resolves to become stronger to avoid concerning them. Meanwhile, Orihime has partial memories of supernatural events, despite having had her memories altered by Rukia, indicating her exceptional spiritual awareness. A serious accident has occurred, causing a car to flip over. Ichigo senses a hollow's spiritual pressure nearby and believes this is no ordinary accident. His friend Chad offers to help any wounded people, while Ichigo investigates the accident itself. Rukia confirms the hollow's presence, and they set off to deal with the situation. Chad has successfully moved injured people from the accident scene by himself. Meanwhile, he remembers a past incident involving a talking parakeet that contained the soul of a boy named Wichi Shibara. Though the memory seems strange to him, Chad clearly recalls that Ichigo saved him during that incident, even though Ichigo denies it happened. At home, Ichigo has a typical argument with his father, who complains about Ichigo coming home late. Their conversation turns to Masaki, Ichigo's deceased mother. His father maintains a shrine for her, and believes she watches over the family. However, Ichigo hasn't told his father the truth about what happened to his mother's soul. Ichigo reflects on his mother's death when he was 9 years old. She was the center of their family's universe. On that rainy day, Ichigo saw a girl by the river and ran after her. His mother followed to protect him, and she died as a result. Ichigo has always blamed himself for destroying their family's happiness. Shockingly, Ichigo encounters the same girl he saw by the river 6 years ago. He discovers she's actually connected to a hollow called Grand Fisher, who uses a bait decoy disguised as a person to lure victims with strong spiritual pressure. Rukia explains that Grand Fisher has evaded Soul Reapers for 54 years. Ichigo realizes with horror that his mother died because of Grand Fisher's trap. Filled with rage and grief, he insists on fighting Grand Fisher alone, telling Rukia to stay out of the battle. Despite Grand Fisher's taunts about Ichigo being the youngest and weakest Soul Reaper he's faced, Ichigo vows revenge. After the battle, Ichigo asks Rukia to let him remain a Soul Reaper longer. He wants to become incredibly strong to protect people from hollows and eventually defeat Grand Fisher, believing he can't face his mother until he does so. His determination to grow stronger becomes his new purpose. Later, Ichigo and Rukia are frustrated by repeated false alarms on Rukia's soul pager, with hollows disappearing before they arrive. They're confronted by a mysterious figure who introduces himself as Uryu Ishida, a Quincy who hates Soul Reapers. He demonstrates his ability to sense hollows before they do. Uryu reveals he's known about Ichigo since he first became a Soul Reaper and criticizes Ichigo's inability to sense others' spiritual energy. He demonstrates an advanced technique called Raraku, spirit ribbons, that allows him to see manifestations of aura. Uryu shows that Soul Reapers have distinctive red spirit ribbons, highlighting Ichigo's lack of knowledge about his own powers. A confrontation begins between Ichigo and a Quincy, who claims he can kill hollows. The Quincy challenges Ichigo to a game to determine who's superior. Initially reluctant, Ichigo is provoked when the Quincy insults him as merely a substitute Soul Reaper who can't function without Rukia's guidance. The Quincy reveals the rules of their contest. He will scatter hollow bait around town, attracting hollows, and whoever defeats the most in 24 hours wins. Ichigo protests about endangering innocent townspeople, but the Quincy dismisses his concerns, claiming he'll kill every hollow that appears. The Quincy warns that hollows will attack anyone with high spirit energy. He realizes Ichigo doesn't know that others close to him also possess spiritual gifts, which will lead to Ichigo's defeat through despair. Ichigo becomes concerned about protecting his friend Orihime. The situation worsens as an unexpectedly large number of hollows begin appearing throughout town. The Quincy finds himself struggling as he can no longer kill them with one shot, and his strength begins to wane, but he remains determined not to lose. Meanwhile, Chad and Orihime wake up in an unfamiliar place after being saved from danger. They begin to learn about their newly awakened powers and their connection to Ichigo. Flashbacks reveal Chad fighting to protect Ichigo's sister, drawing on his promise to use his strength to protect others. Someone explains to Chad and Orihime about hollows and their recent experiences. He reveals that Ichigo, as a Soul Reaper, possesses extraordinary spirit energy, but limited control, causing it to flow out and affect others. Their own supernatural abilities were dormant until contact with Ichigo activated them. Rukia, struggling in her weakened state against a hollow, encounters the Quincy. He admits to starting the contest, but insists he would never let innocent people be killed. He claims he will protect everyone from hollows, while the Soul Reapers watch from the sidelines. Ichigo finally finds the Quincy and demands they face each other directly instead of continuing the hollow-killing contest. Suddenly, they notice cracks forming in the sky, with hollows gathering at that point. The Quincy charges toward them, declaring himself the winner and identifying himself as Uryu Ishida, the last Quincy. Rukia explains the history between Soul Reapers and Quincies. 200 years ago, Soul Reapers eliminated the Quincies to prevent universal collapse. While Soul Reapers maintain balance by transferring souls between worlds, Quincies completely eradicate hollows, disrupting this balance. A Quincy warrior explains his motivations for fighting. While he doesn't hold a grudge about historical conflicts between Soul Reapers and Quincies, his perspective changed after witnessing his master's death. His master, one of the last surviving Quincies, was kept under constant surveillance by Soul Reapers despite advocating for cooperation between the two groups. The master had proposed that Quincies could complement Soul Reapers by quickly responding to hollows, while Soul Reapers, dwelling in Soul Society, were often slow to arrive. Despite these reasonable suggestions, Soul Reapers dismissed him, telling Quincies not to interfere with their work. The master was killed fighting 5 large hollows. Soul Reapers arrived 2 hours after the battle began, but by then, the master had been dead for an hour. The Quincy believes if Soul Reapers had recognized Quincy's strength and embraced cooperation, his master would still be alive. Now he must demonstrate Quincy power, preferring to fight alone rather than alongside Soul Reapers. Ichigo counters that the Quincy's master wanted cooperation, not competition between groups. Despite their differences, fighting back-to-back against overwhelming odds offers better chances of survival. Ichigo reveals he became a Soul Reaper after a hollow killed his mother, giving him purpose in protecting others from similar suffering. Ichigo criticizes the Quincy for endangering people through their contest, but acknowledges they must now fight together against the numerous hollows. After some resistance, the Quincy agrees to temporary cooperation with the understanding they'll settle their differences later if they survive. The hollows begin acting strangely, looking skyward as if praying. A massive entity appears, Menos Grande, a giant hollow formed from hundreds of ordinary hollows. Normally requiring a royal special task force to defeat, this threat seems beyond a single Soul Reaper's abilities. Ichigo determines that cutting repeatedly is their only option against this enormous threat. As he confronts the Menos, Urahara prevents Rukia from interfering, insisting this battle is necessary for both Ichigo and the Quincy's growth. Ichigo reveals he's never controlled his spirit energy before. It's been on full blast constantly. As he concentrates, his spiritual pressure rises dramatically. Against all odds, he manages to cut the Menos from head to toe, causing it to retreat. The aftermath proves problematic as Ichigo's Zanpakuto begins losing integrity from the massive energy release. The Quincy intervenes, channeling Ichigo's excess spiritual energy through his own weapon repeatedly to stabilize him, though this damages his arms severely. The Quincy mentally apologizes to his master, admitting he never truly hated Soul Reapers. His antagonism stemmed from shame at his own weakness in failing to save his master. By helping Ichigo now, he honors his master's wish for cooperation between Quincies and Soul Reapers. The scene begins with a tense conversation between Yoroichi and Kuchiki. Despite Kuchiki's attempt to act casual by offering milk, Yoroichi cuts through the pretense, acknowledging they both know they are here. Kuchiki calmly accepts this reality, offering to discuss it either before or after milk. The narrative provides background on Soul Reaper Rukia Kuchiki and Ichigo Kurosaki, who gained Soul Reaper powers. Together they defeated hollows, with Ichigo serving as a substitute Soul Reaper. Ichigo later met Uryu Ishida, a Quincy descendant whose clan was wiped out by Soul Reapers. Their battle against a major threat caught the attention of the Soul Society, with Rukia sensing impending danger approaching faster than anticipated. Someone calls for Rukia at dinner time, only to discover she has disappeared again. Meanwhile, Soul Society hunters track down Rukia, confirming she's in a Gigai, artificial body. Rukia reflects on how emotions like attachment, affection, and friendship are burdensome for a Soul Reaper, admitting she may have stayed in the human world too long. Renji appears, confirming Rukia's fear that Soul Society hunters are after her. He demands to know where the human who stole her powers is hiding. Despite Rukia's denial, Renji sees through her human-like expressions. Captain Kuchiki, Rukia's brother, appears, stating that transferring Soul Reaper abilities is a serious offense punishable by death. Uryu Ishida intervenes, introducing himself as Rukia's classmate who hates Soul Reapers. Despite his efforts to fight, Renji overwhelms him. Meanwhile, Ichigo discovers Rukia's short farewell note, warning him to remain hidden and not look for her, suggesting trouble between her and the Soul Society. As Renji prepares to kill Uryu, Ichigo arrives to confront him. Renji recognizes Ichigo as the human who stole Rukia's powers and attacks. During their battle, Renji mocks Ichigo for not knowing his Zanpakuto's name, claiming he's 2,000 years too early to fight as an equal. Despite Ichigo's determination, Captain Kuchiki intervenes, severely wounding him with 2 swift sword strokes. Rukia tries to go to the injured Ichigo but is warned that helping him would increase her sentence. She reveals that Ichigo reminds her of someone from her past. Incredibly, Ichigo manages to move despite his wounds, grabbing Captain Kuchiki's clothing. Renji is shocked by his will to survive. Rukia, accepting her fate, asks her brother to take her to the Soul Society, where she'll pay for her crime. As they depart, Rukia warns Ichigo not to follow, telling him to remain still and live. Captain Kuchiki notes he has shattered Ichigo's soul chain and soul sleep, leaving him effectively dead. The dire situation continues, with grave consequences at stake. If the subject manages to survive the ordeal, they will be completely depleted of power. There will be no remnants of spirit energy left in their possession, and importantly, any Soul Reaper abilities that were wrongfully acquired will be completely eliminated from their being.